Alright, well, welcome back. I know it's been a little bit. Unfortunately, the YouTube overlords, for those who saw my Great Pretender video, kind of didn't like it. They took it down, so I apologize for that, guys. With that being said, I'm back. Not a 8-month hiatus like it was last time. Starting to get some big things planned. So before we get into what today's episode is going to be about, I really want to quickly announce. Hope you all have a great holiday season, and that everyone's being healthy. With that being said, we got a big announcement. Me and a good friend of mine, who will go by Sketcher, and he will be joining me on a majority of the content I do going forward, so give him some love and support as well. I'll make sure to link what I can in the description below. We're starting a website. I've been working on it for the last couple of months, kind of under wraps. It's going to be called Bad Apples Anime Reviews. I'm going to have like a blog. I'm going to be putting a lot of these videos up there. Really hope you guys give it a check out. I've been putting a lot of time into it, but it's officially going to launch on New Year's. With that being said, I'm going through another soft rebranding, so these videos are still going to be on YouTube for anyone who wants to know, but we're also going to put it on our website as well, just to ensure that if we get copyright stricken or for whatever reason we get hit again, we can at least have it on the website. So with that being said, I'm really excited. I hope you guys are going to have a great New Year's. And with that being said, let's get underway. So today's episode, of course, we want to focus on New Year's. Going to be talking about the episode 116 of Lupin the Third Part 2. Real shocker there. The episode is known as the 108 Bells Ring. It has the bell rung 108 times, and it was released on New Year's Eve on December 31st, 1979. With that being said, this is one of the episodes that is still in sub. Lupin the Third is one of those series that hasn't gotten through its entire dub of Part 2. Because Part 2 was so big, and because it took so long to actually dub Lupin to begin with, Part 2 has never been fully dubbed, so this episode is only in sub. It was directed and storyboarded by Isumi Mikamoto, who some of you may know for being the head director of a little show called Naruto Shippuden. I might review that one of these days, depending on what kind of feedback I get. He actually was a long-time regular on Lupin. He actually made his debut earlier in Part 2 on episode 40. He had actually been a veteran of the franchise by this point, as he already had over 30 episodes in his belt. This episode was written by series veteran Kiyoshi Miyata, who had been around actually since the very beginning of the anime. He actually made his debut on the third episode of the whole series, back in Part 1. His writing in particular is very strong in this episode, as this episode is kind of broken up into more of an outlandish 3 acts, which is really what Lupin's strengths are as a franchise. When you talk about Lupin, I think Lupin is one of those series where you have to suspend disbelief. Simply put, it's one of those shows you just can't you can't treat it too seriously. It's a show that's supposed to have fun, and it's having fun. But it really shows with how this episode is written.
During the snowy night preceding New Year's Eve, Goemon is purifying himself under a waterfall in front of Lupin's gang. After completing the purification, he tells them of the legendary treasure ship they're seeking. Long ago, during the Age of the Three Kingdoms in China, a general escaped defeat by buying the treasure ship from the 7 gods of luck of Horai Island, and was able to survive the struggle and form a permanent domain. Later, this very ship was bought by the Tokugawa in order to control the country, and is now being held in a temple not too far away. Lupin plans to take the ship for himself to obtain good luck for the following year, but the security is tight, as Detective Zenigata's boss has employed the Mafia to protect the ship, as well as the deadly sniper, Antonio. When Zenigata tries to confront the killer, he's taken aback by the latter's speed and lack of ears, while he explains that his ability to hear heartbeats and his Tommy gun will allow him to make short work of any intruder. Furthermore, the ship is protected by an electrified glass panel.
One of the things that I picked up on immediately watching this episode was how beautiful and how cool, really nice and clean the character designs were. One shot in particular I really like is early in the episode, Goemon gives some exposition about exactly what they're doing there, and it does this really smooth transition. I really love that shot. That's actually one of the big strengths of this episode, is doing a really strong job at using transitions, something that's not very common in Lupin, but I definitely appreciated it here.
Outside the temple, Lupin is seemingly unfocused on the task ahead, but his companions still move forward with the plan. Jigen takes over a TV station truck while Fujiko works on a motor. Lupin, after a brief explanation from Goemon about the meaning of the 108 bell rings, sneaks inside the temple where the guards are waiting. The chief questions whether or not Lupin will really show up to steal the treasure ship before the 108th knoll, when Antonio suddenly opens fire at the ceiling, causing Lupin to fall down. Antonio is prepared to shoot Lupin, claiming that it's been 7 years, but he's stopped by Zenigata, who needs Lupin alive. Back on the roof, Fujiko questions if Lupin's really gonna make it, as only 7 knolls remain, and Goemon muses that perhaps Lupin will face the heavenly punishment this time.
With animation being what it was at the time, just like modern day, you had stats for certain episodes. So quality was kind of all over the place, and just like in any major anime. But it was much more jarring in this era. And I gotta say, the character designs really were good. They were done by Takashi Asakura. Did a really good job designing all the characters, especially the serial killer and the government officials. They were really cool. I liked their designs overall.
Soon, Lupin's shown on a live television broadcast, while Antonio urges Jigen to come out of hiding and face him to settle the score that they have. In the truck, Jigen explains that 7 years before, in Santa Fe, he and Lupin stole the gemstones Cat's Eyes from a church, only to be attacked by a hitman who was after the same treasure. This turns out to be Antonio, who also went by the name Andy Loff. In the following struggle, Jigen and Lupin shot off Antonio's ears, but the former got wounded in the left arm. After the loss of his ears, Antonio sided with the Mafia and learned to use his Tommy gun in lieu of the sniper rifle. As Zenigata is about to take off, Lupin asks for a last request, to be allowed to hear the last toll and to get some paper and pens, so that he can draw the treasure ship. Fujiko gets more desperate and Jigen is out of ideas, but Goemon reveals something that Lupin gave to him, earmuffs, with the request to wear them after the 100th toll. As the trio proceeds to act under the given instructions, Lupin compares the tolls to a lullaby. For a good reason too, as Fujiko reveals while playing the last toll, the thief hid a hypnotizing device inside the bell, causing everybody to fall asleep. However, Antonio is unaffected due to him being deaf, but Jigen and Goemon turn off the temple's light, allowing Lupin to make his move to steal the ship, while the gunslinger keeps Antonio occupied. With everybody down for the count, the group is soon on the road with the ship and they reach the seaside, where Antonio follows them with a chopper to exact his vengeance. Using the car's previously stolen engine and a stolen fan propeller, Lupin equips the ship with the locomotion method just in time, as Antonio shows up on its helicopter. The thieves get on board, and Lupin and Jigen take care of Antonio once and for all, sending him into the ocean. Then the four are free to enjoy the sight of the rising sun on the first day of the new year.
A real fun fact, just on a side note about this series, is that this series, in terms of audio, was kind of a big deal, as this was the first episode of anime to ever have both a mono and a stereo broadcast. For those who don't know, mono and stereo are two major audio types. Mono was the mainstream for anime for its early years. However, they switched over to stereo, and that's what everything is now, because it's a little cleaner.
Now, I'm relatively new to the Lupin the Third franchise myself. Mod actually introduced me to some of the movies and a few episodes of Fujiko's series, but I have yet to watch the original series proper, much less part 2 like we're discussing here. I don't know too much about the 5 main characters that I've been presented with, at least not in comparison to those who grew up with these characters, but I'll list off my standout moments that came from them. Right away, I really appreciate the legitimate strength that comes from Goemon's character during his introduction shot, where he's standing underneath the freezing cold waterfall in snowy weather. It really says something about his strong will and resolve that allows him to endure cold temperatures like this, especially for the sake of purifying himself. I understand that Goemon's kind of the odd one out in Lupin's group, seeing as they primarily fit the kind of fun gangster stereotypes, while Goemon kind of keeps his traditional Japanese sensibilities about him. And while I think that makes him stand out overall, he seems to fit right in with the often comedic gang thanks to this moment. It's also nice to see him and Lupin kind of having some downtime on the roof together.
I think something I love about this episode is it does everything that you want a good episode of Lupin to do. It does a good job keeping everyone's characters within the boundaries. I mean, there's some scenes with Zenigata in this episode that are really high up there for me.
From what I understand, Detective Zenigata hates Lupin with a passion. The two of them have always been foils. They've done this cat and mouse stuff for the entire franchise, and no matter how many times they separate, they always manage to find their way back to each other. Which is why I think Zenigata jumping up to attack Antonio in order to prevent Lupin from getting shot is another standout moment. Of course, this is obviously so Lupin can stay alive for any and all future trials that could come up if Zenigata arrests him successfully. And of course, he's quick to relish in this moment of victory on live TV.
This is one of those episodes that really catches the charm of what Lupin is. It is something that can bring serious moments, comedy, and tell a really just fun, lighthearted story all at the same time. And I think that's what makes Lupin, for me, one of my favorite animes, because you don't really get that typically in long-running stories like this. And especially at this point in anime, to think of the time period that Lupin came out in, it was so far ahead of its time. You had series like Go Nagai's works like Devilman and Cutie Honey, and I mean, you had Astro Boy, you had Dr. Slump. Dragon Ball was not quite in the picture yet, but it's just, you look at that era and it's crazy to think that a series that had almost 130 episodes at this point was still able to find ways to keep itself fresh and original, especially considering Part 2 by far had the longest continuous stretch of airing compared to any of the other Lupin parts. So with that being said, this is a really fun episode.
My last standout moment is when Lupin, Fujiko, Jigen, and Goemon are on the ship together and watching the sun rise on January 1st. I don't know why I love this moment, it just feels like a genuine start to a new year for this crew. Honestly, I'm imagining an alternate universe where this would have been the last time we would have ever heard from Lupin. Thankfully, we've got a lot more after this, but if this would have been the ultimate finale, there's no better day of the year to go out on.
I think overall, when you look at like this episode, you look at the episodes surrounding it, 115, 117, even 118. This is kind of like the standout in that cluster, just because obviously it's a holiday-themed episode. But it's also, once again, it really does what you want a good Lupin episode to do. It's quirky, it's over the top, it has its serious moments, but it's not scared to go right into comedy either. And I think that's kind of like the charm of anime for me. As anime is like the ultimate malleable format of entertainment. It never has to confine itself to one super specific thing. While anime has genres, it never has to necessarily abide by the rules of the genre, as it can really do whatever you want. And I think that's kind of why I really look at this episode, and this is kind of a slept-on one, and I really hope this gets a dub one day. Alright guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I know I had a good time with it. Thank you once again, Sketcher, for editing this all together and joining me on today's episode. We have a bunch of episodes in store for you. We're going to be releasing a monthly episode here, but we're also going to be doing regular blog posts on Bad Apple, so make sure you give us a check out there. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. Let us know what shows you want to see, and we'll see you next time.